everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solo, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. I am Ray Russell, and this week we once again go back to Georgia Championship Wrestling 1982. Going to try to close out the month of March here this week, and in order to do that, going to bring back on our special guest. He is the one and only, welcome back, Jammie Jam Ward.
It's wonderful to be back, Ray. As I always say, I've been chomping at the bit, ready to get back.
Chomping at the bit. Another year older now, too.
Yes, I am. As of this recording, yesterday I turned the big 5'9".
Well,
that leaves 1 year till 6-0.
Happy birthday. Yeah, you're getting to the big 6-0. My goodness, Jammie Ward, what are we going to do with you? Well, at least you're retired and you got that going for you now, and you can kind of enjoy life a little bit, and Bella some time with the doggy and the wife as well. So you got some good things going for you.
As you may just heard in the background, Bella's up on the other floor going after somebody right now. She loves having me home.
It's ironic. I'm sure you've mentioned the irony or noticed the irony over time that you're a mailman and yet you have a dog that barks at other people. So that's always good.
Yeah. Oh, she wants to rip my mailman to shreds when he comes every day.
You'd think she would see that uniform and be like, oh, that's kind of like my daddy's people or something like that. Maybe she doesn't like that, though. Maybe she wants you all to herself. I don't know.
That's very possible.
Yeah, that's cool, though. I love it, man. And I'm happy, you celebrated another one. You got to do it in retirement now. And, oh, man, big things ahead, hopefully, for Jammie Ward. And one of the big things is continuing, call it a big thing, Georgia Championship Wrestling 1982 right here on Regional Wrestling, guys. And Jammie, last we left off, another big Omni card in the books, and we move into the second half of March here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it had slowed down for a little bit there in February. I started picking up at the end of February, but March is on fire in Georgia Championship Wrestling. And these 2 weeks we're about to cover are a big 2 weeks of transition.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some transition involved. We'll get into that as we continue on here. Now, we're coming out of an Omni card where Roddy Piper pinned Wildfire Tommy Rich, non-title matchup, so Tommy retained the national title. He's going to defend it here in Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium, March the 15th. On the card, Tom Prichard over Chick Donovan. Big Red back through the town, making a win over Ricky Harris here. It's Buzz Sawyer teaming with Kevin Sullivan, for now, over Jimmy Garvin and Brad Armstrong. Super Destroyer in singles action over Jim Garvin as well. So Garvin on his way out of the territory, pulling double duty here for someone who didn't show up. And in the main event, Outlaw Ron Bass, listen to this one, guys, defeats Wildfire Tommy Rich to capture the national heavyweight title. We have a new champion in the Outlaw.
Yeah, this is one I, back in the day, did not see coming because, like I said, I was never wowed by Ron Bass. I didn't think Ron Bass was really championship material, and I'd never seen Bass before this run. I'd only read about him very, very little in the magazine, so it was shocking to me that they actually put the belt on top of Bass.
I feel like Bass had a little TV title run there near the end of 81 in Mid-Atlantic, but that's where I see him on the card too. I never really bought into that main event style Ron Bass. Maybe back in the Tennessee territory with Ma Bass and Don Bass and that whole Bass clan thing. I would love to see that, some footage of that. But yeah, Ron Bass here in 1982, I knew this was coming. And it still shocked me when I read it here in the results, because I'm just looking at all this talent here, and it's interesting that Ole chose Ron Bass to put the belt on, but we'll talk more about the Outlaw when we get to TV. Right now, we're going to continue on. Butler, Georgia, March the 16th, Tom Prichard over Ricky Harris, Kevin Sullivan defeating Jim Garvin, Brad Armstrong over Buzz Sawyer, and tag team main event in Butler, small town, small main event. Well, not necessarily small, but it's Leroy Brown and Big Red. Doesn't get much bigger than that over Super Destroyer and Ron Bass by disqualification in Butler. We go on to Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium, March the 17th. Prichard once again in the opener, but continues to score wins, again over Ricky Harris this time. Kevin Sullivan downing Brad Armstrong. Buzz Sawyer over Jim Garvin. Leroy Brown teaming with Ted Oates, Columbus, Georgia's own, over Big John Studd and Ron Bass on a disqualification. And in the main event, the titleless Tommy Rich over Super D in a lumberjack match.
Oh, that match must have been entertaining as hell.
Isn't it interesting that Big Red has been making random loops, usually on these smaller spot shows, but it's like he's there, but Ole doesn't want to use them for TV or the big events, but it's like, oh, we can use you in these small towns like Butler, and we've seen him come through just here and there. So Big Red's still lurking around, Jamie. He's not completely gone yet.
Yeah, maybe Big Red had a shoot job that didn't, allow him to start, doing weekends on television or maybe weekends in general.
A pastor somewhere.
Yeah, and he could just make the weeknight ones at this time.
Well, that's very possible. And, you throw him a bone, Big Red, on some of these smaller town spot shows anyway. We continue on. Douglasville, Georgia, March the 18th. Tommy Prichard once again over Ricky Harris. Brad Armstrong defeating Kevin Sullivan. Buzz Sawyer downing Jimmy Garvin. And Tommy Rich teaming with Leroy Brown over Super Destroyer and Ron Bass. Kind of interesting that Super D and John Studd on some of the shows are both working, well, at some of these events together, and yet not teaming up this week, even though they're the tag team champions.
Well, they've done that with other tag team champions before, in our time of doing this podcast. I mean, you had Superstar and Super D as the champs teaming with all different partners at different times. So it's not that surprising.
No, I mean, I could see them doing that, but it just seems like an entire week of doing it. It's just peculiar. Why wouldn't you have at least one tag title match or one, formidable team? You put them together, you give them the belts, do something with them somewhere. I could see the spot shows kind of spreading the wealth a little bit, but I don't know. Some of the bigger towns, I don't really understand it. But it's not my method of booking, I guess. There was a show.
Maybe it's experimental stuff, right?
It's always experimental. See who works together well, I guess. A lot of experimenting going on here in the territories of the early 1980s, that's for sure. There was a show March 19th in Cornelia, Georgia. We don't have results for that. So right now, Jamie, we move on to Saturday night, 6:05, March the 20th, and more Georgia Championship Wrestling. All right, here we go. March 20th, 1982, Jamie. We're ready for some more Jaja wrestling action right here on the 605, the WTBS Channel 17 Superstation 17. Host, as always, Gordon Soley and Rod Piper. And Hot Rod out here looking good in his dapper blue suit this week, boasting about defeating Tommy Rich at the Omni last weekend. Says he doesn't come out here and brag. He does what he says he's going to do. When Piper says he's going to beat someone, he does it. Just like Bob Armstrong, just like Tommy Rich. And now he's ready to take on the whole wide world, man. Gordon, though, teasing a little surprise for Roddy Piper later today, noting that there's a few people you haven't beaten yet, Rod. Piper, he likes surprises.
Oh, yeah. Hey, this show is going to demonstrate, and I keep saying it almost every time we record, just how great Rod Piper was during this time period. I mean, he's just going to go nuts here.
Yeah, well, spoiler alert, Jamie's going to build it up here, so you guys stay tuned because it's coming very soon. But Roddy Piper likes surprises. I don't know if he's going to like this surprise so much, but it sounds like Gordon's in on it. So we'll have to wait and see, guys. Right now, though, we go off to a VTR featuring Kerry Von Erich in the Dallas territory, taking on the future Hacksaw, Larry Higgins, a very green and, as I noted here, shitty Larry Higgins. He had no idea what he was doing out there. This man, Kerry Von Erich, going to get the win, puts a stomach claw on that very big stomach of Higgins and actually takes him over almost in a backdrop with the claw. Great strength there from Kerry because it was all Kerry doing it. We'd been promised, though, a Kerry Von Erich match this week, and it had sounded like he would be in the studio. But instead, we get this 30-second squash match from Dallas. In my notes here, I wrote, total bummer. Now, Roddy Piper wondering, is Kerry Von Erich my surprise? Boy, wouldn't that have been fun? Gordon refutes that, but puts Kerry's credentials over. Kerry, of course, holding at that point 2 records in the discus throwing. We know that's legit. Also competed in track, football, and amateur wrestling. So we had been promised Kerry Von Erich. They had built him up, and then we just get this quick VTR. So take me through this. Were you expecting Kerry on TV? How did you feel about this VTR instead? And, man, Larry Higgins, woof.
I'm pretty sure they said the week before that they were going to have him on tape and not necessarily live.
Okay.
In studio. I mean, back in the day, I was thinking it was going to be live. But when we reviewed the last show, I believe they did say it was going to be, we were going to have a videotape of, Kerry Von Erich. I was just a little surprised Gordon never brought up Kevin being in the territory a few months before that.
Well, maybe they want to forget that. Kevin kind of screwed him over there. They had some big plans for Kevin, it looked like, and then poof, gone.
Yeah, I still think Fritz called him home for some reason.
Well, they certainly used him. I mean, I believe he was part of, he was definitely part of some of those Star Wars and things of that nature since that time period. But Kerry Von Erich now, the next Von Erich up here for the Georgia territory, it looks like anyway on paper. But let's go back real quick. Just that Larry Higgins match. Like, there's not much to the match. I mean, it is like a 30-second squash, but he was not ready. Some say not ready for prime time. He was not ready for a ring in front of fans at this point.
I mean, the moment Kerry takes him down to start the match, that was like one of the most awkward things I'd seen in a long time. It just didn't even look natural.
No, I have to go back and figure out who he was trained by. Higgins, I mean, because I'm wondering if he was just one of those guys they saw and, farm-fed boy, big boy. I mean, and you can't really, teach that, the size of Larry Higgins. But I'm just wondering if they kind of just put him out there, trotted him out there a little early because due to his size and his looks, they figured, he can't screw it up too much. Luckily, if that match had been booked to go any longer than 30 seconds, you want to talk about a train wreck of doom. Luckily, Kerry puts him away, though, so it looks like they're teasing the potential arrival of Kerry Von Erich in the weeks to come. We'll have to see if that actually comes to fruition or not. But right now, we go to the ring, the actual TBS studio ring here, featuring the former national champion Wildfire Tommy Rich taking on Big Mike Miller. Referee going to be Scrappy McGowan for hour number 1, and the big boy Miller giving Rich a good fight early on, but Tommy using Miller's size against him to ground him onto the mat. Mike stays in the fight, but Rich comes back with a standing elbow and a big knee lift, rocking Miller. Eventually, the Thez press going to put Mike down. Tommy Rich going over. Now without the title, gets the win, though, 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
But the kicker of it all, and I went back and I rewatched this again,
Mm-hmm.
Gordon does not mention that Tommy lost the national title all the way through this match. I mean, it's not uncommon for Tommy to show up to the ring without the title belt.
Right.
It's like, whenever he's champion, that title title belt stays in the back in the dressing room. If they even give it to him at all, for fear that he might lose it somewhere.
Or pawn it.
Or pawn it, something like that. But we don't find out until what we're about to go over next.
Yeah, and I was wondering if that was done by design, Gordon not mentioning it during the matchup because they're saving it. They didn't want to take away maybe from the action in the ring. And then we learn our hero here on TV has lost the national title as Tommy Rich comes over, apologizing to the people for losing the belt to Ron Bass. Tommy Rich admitting also to losing to Roddy Piper at the Omni, confirming what Hot Rod had said at the top of the program. He said maybe he let Piper get too far under his skin and his head wasn't right for that bout. Then the next night in Augusta, Ron Bass beats him for the national title, taking nothing away from the Outlaw, but Tommy Rich says maybe his head wasn't in the right place. Sounds like he's making some excuses to me, but anyway, the Wildfire has a message for Hot Rod here. Says he's not done with him yet, but right now his number one focus is getting back that national title. He's coming for Ron Bass, and if Bass is the better man, then he'll win again. Tommy Rich feels like maybe it was a fluke. Maybe his head wasn't in the right place. He's not making excuses, but it sure sounds like an excuse to me, Jamie.
Well, yeah, I would say it was a fluke because nobody saw Ron Bass going to become the next champion. I had no fathom that they would ever put a belt on Ron Bass at that point, especially out of nowhere. They hadn't even built up a feud.
Right.
They only had, some house show matches that, you and I had commented about. They're kind of laying, some breadcrumbs to something that's going to occur. And here it is. Ron Bass pins Tommy Rich for the national title. But how appropriate is it that it's almost a year, we're 11 months earlier, and Tommy Rich, the night after Ric Flair goes 60 minutes with Harley Race, defeats Harley Race for the NWA title because Race was kind of worn down from Flair the night before, and you had the same thing happen to Tommy Rich, but this time with the national title.
Yeah, Tommy Rich, just, like you said, roughly a year ago, now the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and he's been the national champion for quite some time. And doing it in Augusta without any build, as you said, does feel awkward. It feels weird. It feels random. And it's almost like Tommy showed up to the building late. And, and it was like, okay, well, we'll show you, Tommy. We'll put you in your place here for a week or two, at the very least. And so Ron Bass gets the nod, though, however, and he is the brand new national champion. And we go back to the ring now to see him in action against Manny the Samoan. As we get wrestling from Ron Bass this week, takedowns and arm work, I noticed here in my notes. Roddy Piper not shocked that Ron Bass won the title, calling him a sleeper contender, putting over Bass's powerful upper body, specifically his shoulders, Piper referring to them as smuggling coconuts in them their shoulders. Roddy, though, curious what move Ron Bass used to win the title from Tommy Rich, because Roddy admits that his match with Tommy Rich, Piper, and Rich at the Omni, Rich came the closest to anyone ever beating the Hot Rod before. So I thought that was a really good move here on commentary. Roddy Piper putting over Tommy Rich, even though he beat him. Yeah, I beat you, but then you came the closest anybody has ever come to beating me, Tommy Rich. But what does that make Ron Bass when he beats the Wildfire?
Right, so that elevates Ron Bass up a little bit because nobody's as good as Roddy Piper. We all know that. He told us that. But here this guy, Ron Bass, beats the guy that's just a little bit below Roddy Piper's level.
Absolutely. So we're in here with Ron Bass and Manny the Samoan in the ring. This particular Samoan, not good. Maybe not Hacksaw Higgins bad, but not good either. Dead weight in the ring. Awful bumps as well. But the Bass Stampede, as it is being called now, not the Texas Stampede any longer. It is the Oklahoma Stampede by definition. The Power Slam gets the win, 4 minutes and 59 seconds. We hear Tommy Rich talk a little more after the Outlaws match. He's coming back to the North soon, but we also learned that Tommy Rich has his rematch with the Outlaw April 4th in the Omni.
Yeah, and come to think of it, as you can go back to revisionist history.
Sure.
Bass's push here is probably a result, as you said, only with Bass and Mid-Atlantic, plus Bass and Dusty Rhodes had some kind of long-term friendship.
Right, yeah.
So you got Dusty coming, in and out of the Omni. It might have been Dusty's idea. Hey, Ole, you want to put the title on Ronnie Bass for a little bit, baby?
Well, it could have been shine him up for Florida or something along those lines, or get him over on cable TV to get him ready for another territory. That could have been the situation too.
Yeah. Speaking of Florida, to jump back 2 matches, back to the Kerry VTR.
Yes.
Maybe they're getting ready to try Kerry coming in as a heel in Georgia, since I believe David's about to start up in Florida as a heel. We're right around that time period, aren't we?
David's, yeah, he's in there in 82, but the way they portrayed Kerry here, I'm not sure what the goal was for that, especially when we just saw Kevin as the baby face in the fall. I'm not really sure. I don't know that Kerry ever makes it here, to be honest with you, based on I didn't look too far ahead, but I looked enough ahead that I feel like Kerry never really arrives. He's like
I don't think he does.
He's like Glacier in WCW. It just keeps coming for a long period of time. So, but we get an Omni card rundown for April the 4th, guys. Really fun stuff here. Rematch. Going to see Dusty Rhodes and Terry Funk team again to take on Ole Anderson Stan Hansen, this time in a bunkhouse match. Plus on the card, the Great Kabuki taking on Bob Armstrong in a rematch. Gary Hart barred from ringside. If you'll recall last time out, Gary was handcuffed to the top rope. That apparently didn't work out too well, I'd have to imagine, because this time he is barred from the building. Also, national champion Ron Bass, Tommy Rich getting the rematch against the Outlaw there. Roddy Piper, we learned, going one-on-one at this point against, here's the surprise, they give it away here, Dick Slater. Yes, Mr. Excitement, Mr. Unpredictable himself, Dick Slater coming back to the territory, coming back from San Antonio again to battle Roddy Piper. More on that in just a second. Rest of the card, going to see Kevin Sullivan versus Tom Prichard in 6-man tag team action. It's Leroy Brown, Michael Hayes, and Mr. Wrestling 2. Talk about just pulling some names out of a bag. Taking on Big John Studd, Super Destroyer, and Buzz Sawyer. Plus Ricky Harris battling Brad Armstrong. Now, I did notice here in the rundown, no Freddie Miller yet, but he will return. We're actually going to hear Freddie's voice before this episode's over. But let's go back. Let's look at a couple of these matches real quick, Jamie, if you will. I wanted to get your take on the announcement, Piper versus Slater, and anything else that might stick out to you.
Piper versus Slater, that's another slip up on Ole's part. You're I understand that on the syndicated show, that's not going to air. But you just gave it away for the rest of the country and your fans in Atlanta what the surprise is later on. They did the same thing with Austin Idol back in October when they said Idol was going to appear, and then somebody, I forget who in the interview, said Idol was there that day. Save a little surprise, Ole. Come on. People want to be reeled in.
Yeah, I mean, booking is more than just putting an angle out there in the ring. Bob Roop has explained that many times. Booking is strategically putting together TV to where it makes sense, to where it flows. And that's one of those kind of things where it's like, you can have the greatest angles in the entire world on the program, but if you're giving away spoilers to your surprise later in the program, I mean, you're not doing yourself any service there. And obviously, this is a slight oversight, or maybe a major oversight, depending on how you want to look at it here, from Ole Anderson or whoever was structuring the TV ads. But we're going to hear Piper do a pretty good job covering that up here in just a minute. Before we get to that, though, we get an Armstrong's interview. Bob Armstrong out here. He has a rematch with Kabuki, as we know. This time, Gary Hart barred from the Omni. And more selling of Georgia Championship Wrestling on tour, because now they're expanding. We've talked about it. Heading to the north, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia. Of course, they're doing Georgia. We've seen them creep over into Alabama. So Ole not afraid to try to expand here in 82. And we're going to see how that works out for them, because we've got other talent coming in. We've got lots of new talent heading into the territory at all times. And right now we're about to see a matchup involving one of those talents, Chief Wahoo McDaniel. But before we get there, we do come out of the announcement, the Omni card, of course, where we learn, and Roddy learns, that he'll be wrestling Dick Slater. So the surprise let out of the bag, and Roddy Piper now scheduled to wrestle Dick Slater on April the 4th. But Hot Rod here says, Jammie says, it's not happening. He's not wrestling Dick Slater. Keep that in your back pocket, guys.
Well, Piper's not going to wrestle anybody he doesn't want to, at least in his mind. That's the way he's going to do. I mean, Slater's just as nuts as Piper is.
I love the fact that Roddy saw what aired, he knew what aired, and he sold it rather than trying to ignore it and playing everybody a fool and insulting our intelligence. He knows we saw it, so that means he saw it, and he's not going to sit there and pretend like he doesn't know what the surprise is at this point. So he's going to save it for a little bit later in the program, as you mentioned. We've got a lot more to go between Dick Slater and Roddy Piper before this episode of TV, before this regional wrestling's over with. But right now we do have a match in the ring involving Wahoo McDaniel taking on Ricky Harris. And the big man Harris, the future Black Bart, laying in some shots early, but that only results with Wahoo going to his Tommy Hawk chops. And he takes Harris down to the mat for a lengthy chin lock here. But finally, time to take him home. Scoops Harris up, whips him off the ropes, a big Wahoo chop, and drops the elbow to the top of Harris's head. Gives McDaniels the win here, 3 minutes and 35 seconds. Now remember, Jammie, half that match was a chin lock. However, Wahoo McDaniel very winded here as he walks over to Gordon for a promo as well. He says this was his first match back from a Japan tour, and out of breath, acknowledging that here. He can't really hide the fact that he can't catch his breath, but my takeaway was, if you just came back from Japan where you're working 30-minute matches, my God, you shouldn't be out of breath. It's not like it's like, well, I've had some time off. No, you just came back from working a tour to Japan. You should be totally cardio.
Yeah, but what happens if Wahoo ran into Gordon at the airport that morning?
Well, you never know what these guys were doing before the show, but, well, that's a good call too, I suppose. But Wahoo he was there. It wasn't like he was out of it. He was really, you would have thought he just ran a classic 20-minute match with somebody in the ring, but it was just a simple squash, and he was definitely gasping for breath to the point where he knew he had to sell it on the commentary here. But Gordon has him here to watch a VTR rather than talk about Wahoo and what he has going on. We're going to talk first about a situation involving Terry Funk, Ole, and Stan Hansen, of course, where Ole and Hansen turn on Terry Funk. Now, Wahoo going to give his thoughts on that return match, the Bunkhouse match coming up at the Omni, siding with the baby faces, of course. And then Gordon going to talk a little bit about the U.S. heavyweight title and everything going on up there in the Mid-Atlantic territory right now. The current champion is one Sergeant Slaughter, having won a tournament up there for the belt. Wahoo being the former champion and Piper being the Mid-Atlantic champion. Wahoo says neither of them were involved in the tournament when Sarge won it. So Wahoo isn't sure that Sergeant Slaughter can call himself a champion at all. And for those of you curious what's going on right now, back around September time of 1981, Abdullah the Butcher was hired as a bounty hunter, comes in, injuring Wahoo on TV, jabbing him in the forehead, blood everywhere on TV. They had to censor it out. But it took Wahoo out of the territory for some time, leading to the title being vacated, leading to the tournament Sergeant Slaughter going over. Now for Wahoo to speculate, hey, who did Sergeant Slaughter beat to become the Mid-Atlantic? Well, he beat Ricky Steamboat in the finals, so that's saying something. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I'm going to guess the whole purpose of this part is because they never did really bring Slaughter into Georgia. I don't even think he came in for a one-shot deal.
I don't believe so, yeah.
I think the only purpose of this was Ole's still booking both promotions at this point. Him and Jimmy Crockett haven't had their little spat yet.
Not yet.
And crowds must be down slightly in JCP.
You think crowds are down in JCP around this time?
I don't know. I'm just giving a theory here. And maybe that's why they have been talking about certain things, whether it be Greensboro or Charlotte. Ole does it in his interviews quite often, mentioning Mid-Atlantic towns.
Yeah.
And we had Tommy Rich mention it about a month or so back.
And he'll do it again.
Right. And now they're showing Sergeant Slaughter. So maybe there was just like a slight dip and they just want to reinforce things a little bit to make sure people know that while Georgia is taking off, Mid-Atlantic is still one of the top promotions. Same thing down in Florida. They mentioned Florida a lot. So they're probably trying to keep all three territories kind of on the same level instead of putting one over top of the other right now.
Well,
and
it
doesn't hurt.
No, I totally agree with you there. What I was thinking is maybe not necessarily the towns are doing bad right now in Crockett, but maybe with Ole getting a percentage of the cut of the gate, being the booker up there, it's always good to get a few more asses in the seats, though. And it doesn't hurt. And even if they're selling out right now, it's not going to hurt to put over this, this on the national level on the cable TV so that the fans in the Mid-Atlantic region are going, wow, these stars really are nationwide, national, international superstars here. We got, as you just pointed out, they throw to a VTR of a worldwide match featuring Sergeant Slaughter versus Steve Muslin, which was also Steve Travis. He's going to get the win here, Sarges, with the big Slaughter cannon clothesline and Cobra clutch in about 4 minutes time. But that is very interesting that they talked to Wahoo about the U.S. title, the storyline going on right now up there in the Carolinas, which doesn't affect Georgia at all. Slaughter doesn't come down. Wahoo's not sticking around here for very long either. But it's a way to get things over in Crockett without just using the Crockett TV. We're using the Georgia TV, the national cable television right now to get this thing over. So I think it's a good call because, well, Ole's, got a deal up there. He's the booker, so he's trying to get his stuff over. You can't blame him for that.
I'll give you one more theory that just kind of popped in my head. Maybe Ole and Barnett at this point, Ole's, taking over more and more. Maybe they have a theory that they want to try to buy out Crockett, or Ole knows Crockett wants to buy out Barnett and maybe merge the territories and take some of the Mid-Atlantic guys with them up into the Ohio and Michigan and all that stuff.
You have a lot of theories, Jamie. There's a lot of ifs in that right there.
Not that it ever came concrete, but maybe it's running through their mind at this point. Maybe they want to become a super territory first.
I feel like everybody that you just mentioned wants to own these promotions outright. So I just don't see them ever having those conversations, though, to where they would even have a hint to believe any of that could happen. Although we saw in the past, the Pro Wrestling USA guys trying to work together and things of that nature as well. So you never say never. And we know Ole was at this point already questioning Jim Barnett. Where is this money going, et cetera, et cetera. So you never truly know what was going on behind the scenes with any of these guys.
No. Kind of like the Vince McMahon when he took over All American Wrestling. He was getting tapes from everybody else only so he could steal that talent.
Yeah, let's get him over before I bring him in. That's
right.
That's
not
perfect.
Necessarily that the talks ever happened between Crockett and Barnett, but maybe the thoughts were going through Ole through one or the other.
You can't rule anything out, especially when it comes to the promoters. That's for certain. But I mean, it's all wishful thinking. What if and whatnot. It's very interesting to know just simple little things that could have happened differently. Obviously, Ole's going to have a falling out with Crockett, and this is all going to go away very soon. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Right now, we're going to go back to the ring to see the booker in action himself, one of the promoters as well, Ole Anderson, teaming with Stan Hansen. Couldn't pick a better partner, taking on Ken Timms and Tim Horner. Now, Ole, he always loved Tim Horner for some reason, and nothing against Tim. He was a capable worker, just very odd that Ole always gave him a little bit extra out there in the ring, and this time he gives Tim a couple of counters on Anderson himself. But Horner going to run into a brick wall elbow from one Stan Hansen. early in the match, and that brings in Ken Timms, who doesn't fare much better. Long beatdown on Timms, followed by the lariat. Going to put him down 3 minutes, 39 seconds. We also hear from Ole and Stan after the matchup, talking that big Bunkhouse Return match at the Omni. Stan Hansen says he was raised in a bunkhouse. No problems here. Ole reminding us of the World Tag Title tournaments ongoing across the nation and beyond, referring to Funk and Dusty as a tune-up match for the world titles. I don't know about that one, Jammie.
Well, in their minds, yes. I mean, what a team Ole and Stan actually were. How impressive they were in the ring. And it was just so easy to hate those two guys at that point. Always just oozes.
He was never going to be the cool heel, that's for sure.
Yeah. He was just slimy, Ole was.
You slime, to quote Bruno Sammartino. Well, I was looking at this, and as we got started, I saw Ole and Horner in the ring, and I go, I don't know if you were even paying attention, but I go, I want to see what happens here. And immediately Ole's giving Horner counters to his holds and things of that nature. Now, Tim doesn't fare so well with Hansen, but it's just interesting from the jump how much Ole worked with Tim Horner, how much he tried to do what he could for. Never put him in a real big spot or anything like that, but he always gave Tim a little more. I don't just mean in their matches, but I mean in anything he did when he was booking, Tim Horner was in the territory. Tim even comes back in 1990 into 91 for WCW when Ole was booking. Working with Brad a little bit. He was underneath. They gave him the Star Blazer gimmick, kind of a rip-off of the Blue Blazer. It didn't really work out, Ole was always trying to do something for Tim Horner, it felt like.
Did Ole train Horner?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, because I know like a year later, 2 years later, at one of the Starcades, they had Ole team up with Keith Larson,
right?
Who they said was trained by Ole at the time. So I'm just wondering, with all the love that he had with Tim Horner, did he come through his dojo?
Well, I'm sure at some point maybe Ole showed him a thing or two, kid. But I think Tim got trained by like Rick Connors, who was, down there in the South and whatnot. But also I think the Briscoes helped him a little, but I believe it was like Rick Connors who was credited as the main trainer of Tim Horner. But Tim spent so much time early on in the ring with so many guys that, he picked it up, and it's just another natural, where you pick it up fast. Unlike Larry Higgins, as we saw earlier. But we're going to continue on. So after another rundown of the Omni card, Roddy Piper reiterating that he will be at the Omni, but he will not be wrestling Dick Slater. He's going to go anywhere they ask him. Columbus, Ohio, Huntington, West Virginia. He'll fight the Armstrongs, Tommy Rich, but no Dick Slater. And as Piper finishes, I head to LOL, as Gordon says, and Roddy will meet Dick Slater at the Omni. You got to love that.
Yeah, hey, and it's nice to see Piper's going to start making the Georgia tour a little bit at this point. Yeah, because up to now, he's only been working Omni, and we've seen him maybe do a Columbus, Ohio card. That was about it. So it's good to see he's actually going to work some towns.
Yeah, Piper beginning to move into the territory a little more, become more acclimated as a wrestler and not just an announcer. So we're starting to see him in some of the other towns anyway. Columbus, Huntington usually ran on the same day, so he's going to make that date as well. It's going to be interesting to see who they have the hot rod working on all these cards. But I just love that Piper goes on this 2-minute tirade about, I'm not working Dick Slater, I'm not wrestling Dick Slater, I'll be there, but I'm not doing that. And as soon as he takes a breath, Gordon says, and Roddy will meet Dick Slater at the Omni. You gotta love. Gordon was great at getting those things in at the end. He used to do that to Terry Gordy a lot.
Yeah, a little dissension among the ranks between the two guys that are usually, very lovable with each other. I mean, even earlier in the show, I forgot what Gordon said, but Piper says a term that it got over my head then, but now it was an insider term where he says, Gordon, you got to be ribbing me. You didn't hear that term on television.
No.
Or catch it back then. Nowadays, you know what a rib is.
Yeah.
But back then, you wouldn't have known what he was talking about.
I never noticed
that was pretty funny.
And completely off topic, too, but that always makes me think of, as an adult, whenever I go back and watch Bobby Heenan, whenever he would get really upset about something, go, they jobbed me. And, and I didn't notice that growing up, obviously, but it's so funny to go back now and talk about Bobby Heenan talking about getting jobbed, and things like that. So, but we're going to go on. You want to talk about a matchup? Wow. On TV, Dick Slater arrives. So Roddy Piper just finishes his tirade. I'm not wrestling Dick Slater. And out comes the unpredictable one himself, Dick Slater, for action to take on the Golden Boy, Chick Donovan, here on TV. Piper spinning the match on commentary, pointing out just how nutty Dick Slater really is. Piper says, I can outsmart him, but Slater, he's Looney Tunes, man. Gordon likes the matchup between Slater and Piper, calling it two volatile men getting together, like combining nitro and glycerin. Explosions, guys. Meanwhile, in the ring, Slater sending Donovan outside early, but he's going to help him back inside, drag him back inside. Top rope, standing elbow drop from Slater. Never in any real trouble here. Delayed back suplex, going to give Dickie the win. 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I was hoping for a little more competitiveness here from Chick Donovan, but at the same time, they're building Slater for Piper, so I get it.
Oh, yeah, you got to put Slater over here as somebody that's a threat to Roddy Piper, especially after you just told everybody that Piper pinned Tommy Rich.
Yeah, indeed. And so Dick Slater, you had to believe this was coming. Piper at the commentary area, Dick Slater in the ring. Here comes the confrontation that we've been waiting for. Dick Slater coming over to do an interview. Slater mocking Roddy Piper's promos as the two men go nose to nose here. Piper, though, going to back up a little bit, gets a little huffy, and throws his microphone down, walks away, does the hot rod. Don't see that very often. Dick Slater says he's going to talk a little Rodney Piper. Rodney, guys. Rodney Piper here on TBS. It made him sick sitting at home listening to Roddy Piper each and every week. Maybe he did beat Tommy Rich. Maybe he beat a few others. But he just keeps running his mouth. He won't shut up. So Slater looking to shut Piper up, maybe once and for all, maybe knock his mouth off his face.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a planned spot with them calling him Rodney or not, or if Slater just tripped into something great.
Right.
But it really caught on at the time. I mean, it ends up leading to a magazine cover, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, where Bill Apter actually puts on the cover, Rodney Piper, the Mouth of the South. And we'll get to it on television eventually here, where Piper just goes off about being called Rodney. And then you get the crowd chanting Rodney. And they'll get a good couple months out of that, out of something that we don't know whether it was a planned spot or not.
Yeah, it really felt like you said, it just kind of came out of the blue. I don't know that it was intentional either, the way, Slater does it here, because he does it after Piper walks away initially, but that's not going to be the case as we continue on. What happens next, though, another random appearance from your boy, Steve-O, in that same white suit that he wears each and every week out here. And he's not even ready. He's out here buttoning up his suit as he's talking with Gordon, which only lasts about 30 seconds before Roddy Piper immediately making his return after Dick Slater walks away. Piper going to cut Steve-O off before he really has a chance to say anything. And Steve just walks away. I wrote, what the fuck? I don't know what we're doing with Steve-O here. He's not at the top of the show. He's not hosting the second hour of the show. I don't know why he's here. What is going on? Why does nobody have an answer for this? He has been here since the fall of 1980. He's still here going into the spring of 1982. He hasn't been able to wrestle since November of 81. And he just comes out here in this white suit in between hours every fucking week and says absolutely nothing for about a minute and then goes away.
Yeah, my head is scratching. You know what? Maybe I need to get hold of Captain Nick and see if Captain Nick can host an autograph session with Steve-O so we can finally get some questions answered.
Yeah, we need the questions answered for sure. It's been going on, and I don't know if this is Steve's last appearance, because every time we say it is, he always comes back, and I don't want to jinx it, but I do believe this may be it. We'll have to wait and see, but just random appearances, and for nothing. It's not even like he's adding any insight or anything here. He's literally appearing just to show that he's in the studio at this point. He's out here for 20 seconds.
Now, I don't remember, but if there's anybody that remembers watching the Sunday shows, was Steve-O on the Sunday shows?
That's the only conclusion I was coming to, and there's like very little Sunday out there from 1982, so I can't really draw any real conclusion to that. But I mean, that's a good call. I'd be interested to see how that played out, but maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. But yeah, so Steve-O is here. He's in studio. What he's doing, I have no idea, but he's still around for now. But he takes off wisely as an irate Roddy Piper does return, exploding on commentary here, mentioning that his name is Roddy. It is not Rodney. Don't nobody call me Rodney. Wild, crazy, hot rod, just the way we like him.
This is the ultimate Roddy Piper right here. And I keep saying that, and he just keeps getting better and better and better every single week. But yeah, Piper's just so great. And yes, I know Michael Hayes is my all-time favorite, but Roddy Piper is right there. I mean, look at the great interview people or talkers that they had on Georgia Championship Wrestling for almost a 2-year run between Hayes and Piper. I mean, it's just Just Piper alone is worth finding this stuff on YouTube and rewatching.
Well, it was gold putting him on commentary to start with rather than just making him another talent that comes out here and cuts a promo, works him. Sure, he's going to have a few great feuds, but I mean, talk about getting some heat. These people have been listening to him 2 hours every week here on TBS, and Roddy Piper built it up, and now he's working Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong. He has issues with Dick Slater. He's immediately put into the main event talent as everybody's working is a who's who here in the Georgia territory, and now it's Dick Slater out here referring to Piper as Rodney, who apparently Roddy is not a fan of that name. And it's so funny, I think back to like Dallas and the silly Chauncey gimmick that they gave Bill Irwin. Oh, his real name was Chauncey, and he changed his name to Bill, and the fans would chant Chauncey at him when he would come out and wrestle back around this time period. And I just thought it was so hokey and so lame and so just, and all, what would Bill do? He would, take his hands, cup his ears, things of that nature, and maybe don't call me Chauncey or something along those lines. But this is essentially the same exact thing, but this is showing you how you can take something like that and make something out of it if you have the talent to do so.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy, Ray.
And so we end hour number 1, we come into hour number 2, and Piper is still fuming, still on his tirade about being called Rodney. He says his name is Roderick George Piper from Scotland. Roderick was a Gaelic conqueror, and he's proud of that name. And anyone who called him Rodney growing up, he would bite their face off. Nobody calls me Rodney. Piper then going to take a deep breath and calm down because he wants to forget about Dick Slater and let's just call some good matches, Gordon. So you got to love Piper just kind of, all right, I said my piece. And I just love that his tirade ended in hour 1 and it continued into hour number 2.
Yeah, well, he's an emotional kind of guy. He just can't let things go.
Take a breath. And he reset, though. I like that he reset. We got to be professional here, though. All right, let's get back to the action. But we don't do that. Instead, Ron Bass out here first, talking about being, once again, the new national champion, having beaten Tommy Rich, of all people. And he heard the Wildfire out here earlier making excuses for losing the title belt. Well, Ron Bass going to give Tommy Rich the rematch he wants. But just once. One shot you get, Tommy, and it happens at the Omni.
Hey, I'm not usually a Ron Bass guy, but I will say that this was a very solid interview, putting him over as the new champ.
No, he did a good job here. Now, necessarily what he does in the ring doesn't really work for me a lot of the time. Just, kind of that boring, slow plotting big guy stuff. And we're going to see probably some of that here, I believe, before we end the program again. But this particular promo I really like because you're wanting to make excuses. I'm going to show you what kind of a guy I am, what kind of a champion I am. I'm going to give you that title shot. I believe in myself. I have confidence. I'm not a chicken shit heel. So, but it is just one chance, Tommy Rich. So bring your excuses if you will, but you only get the one shot. So make it count. April 4th in the Omni, guys. But right now we go back to the ring. Bob Armstrong taking on Ricky Harris. Referee for hour number 2 is Nick Patrick. Some good hammering by the Bullet early on. Great strikes by Bob Armstrong. Makes everything look so good, so real. Harris does take over briefly with a back elbow to the jaw, but Bob comes barreling right back with a jumping karate kick and a martial arts back fist, we'll call it. Gets the win, 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Boy, somebody's been watching some Bruce Lee movies, getting ready for Kabuki. Bob Armstrong out here busting out the karate kick, almost like a running crane kick, followed by the back fist. Tracy Smothers would make that famous many years later.
Yeah, you're exactly right. He's watching some Bruce Lee movies without a doubt. He's going from the boxer that they portrayed him originally. Yes. Now he's a martial art expert. So go, Bob.
And I love that they separate the martial arts moves. He does the kick. He gives him an elbow, makes him bend over. Everybody stops to watch and see what's going to happen next. Then he gives him the bag. It's not like a big series of moves in a row, right? Like a normal martial arts expert might try to demonstrate on you. This is just, here's one shot, and he's separating everything so that the fans can keep up with it. It's very much movie-like in quality here from the Bullet, who cuts a promo as well. Gordon and Bob putting over Ricky Harris in that tough match he just had before pivoting to Gino Hernandez. Gino, apparently, Jammie has laid down some conditions before he will agree to return to Georgia Championship Wrestling. And that's when we go off to a VTR from Southwest Championship Wrestling. We hear from Gino, the man from Houston, the city of class, where the best live. People in power have recently been leaving Atlanta for the town of Houston. Why? For more power, better conditions, better living. So he tells the fans, stop sending me the mail, send it to Georgia Championship Wrestling. Tell them to show Gino the respect he deserves. Meet his conditions, which happen to be triple the highest paid purse ever in Georgia wrestling history. If you ever want to see Gino again wrestle in Atlanta, you got to up the game here, apparently. And we cut back to Bob Armstrong, who doesn't know if Gino will ever have those conditions met.
And I believe we find out that Gino doesn't have those conditions
I don't
met.
think he ever does now.
I don't, as I was wrong before, but I think we're going to hear his name come up one more time. But I don't think they ever continue on with this. And actually, it was a good angle that if they had proceeded with, probably would have really gotten him over big time when he eventually did return.
Yeah, it would have been great if they could have continued these stories. Of course, Gino finds some other things to do down there in Texas and beyond. And it's really unfortunate because I love the story they're doing here with I'm the hot shot from Houston and you got to pay me X amount of, I'm the hot commodity. Everybody wants me, the hottest free agent, if you will, kind of thing they did, with Randy Savage and the WWF there early on. So it's kind of interesting that they have Bob Armstrong in here, but you got to have somebody comment on it. And so the babyface makes sense. He mentioned, and as you pointed out, I don't know if they ever meet those conditions. Gino's actually going to work a couple house shows up north for Georgia here, but that's about it, I believe, for his future in Georgia Championship Wrestling. So to answer your question, no, I don't believe they ever agreed to Gino's conditions. Not that it sounds like they would have, but wow, you got to love the character, and I just wish they would have done more with him. This would have been an amazing main event spot. Gino and Tommy Rich. We talked about it before. Put Gino and Piper together. They were getting along, but eventually when they break up, oh my God, you want to talk about printing money. Gino versus Roddy Piper in the promos, in the ring. I mean, it would have been just awesome to see Piper, the aggressor, the baby face, coming hot, angry after that cocky asshole Gino down the road.
And this would have led to Gino eventually get into the WWF because he would have been so over in Georgia. Yeah. Him and Piper would have been the number one and number one of each side after that breakup would have occurred.
Now, Gino,
but again, it's what if.
Yeah, it's all what if. And again, Gino's going to have a little bit of time to shine on the USA Network with Southwest Championship Wrestling further down the road. But this is the big deal. This is TBS, and this would have made Gino's career, really, you have to think. And maybe things would have turned out for the better for Gino's life, or maybe even worse, maybe even quicker, with the money that would have been rolling in. But we go back to Armstrong, who was talking about Gino Hernandez there. Then he turns his attention to Gary Hart, the Great Kabuki. One way to cure the two-man problem, says the Bullet: control the head, control the body. Eliminate the head, which is Gary Hart, from ringside, and he can control Kabuki. So, again, referencing Gary Hart being banned, as we go to a VTR of Kabuki recently scoring a win over Ken Timms. But Bob promises he's coming ready for the rematch at the Omni.
I would have loved to see this match live because I hated Kabuki. and it wasn't hate as in I hate. It was like, I hate and I don't want to see this guy anymore.
It's the go.
Come on, Bob. just destroy him.
Yeah.
Come on. I didn't even buy at the time that Dusty Rhodes was actually, Kabuki was a serious threat to Dusty Rhodes.
Right. Well, Dusty tried his best to get it over from his end. And I mean, they had some fun little, backstory there. The stuff they were doing on TV between them two, and the things we were learning that was happening at the Omni. Weren't really getting a lot of footage thanks to Ole during this time frame. I'm not really a big fan of that either. They were doing a great job kind of promoting Omni to Omni before with all the VTR stuff from the arena. But I guess Ole felt like that was maybe cutting down on the houses. It would have to be his only logic there, from cutting away from all these Omni, because it's not like they were giving away entire cards on TV, but we would see little angles and maybe even a few finishes to the big matches when they would bring something back, and we're not getting that at all anymore.
I'd be interested to know, because even though I've seen it, but I'm forgetting it. I wonder if Ole was doing the same thing on his Mid-Atlantic run of not showing much.
No, there was no, I don't, unfortunately, there's not a lot of Mid-Atlantic out there from before what's on the network. And that is during Ole's booking run. So it's hard for me to say what they were doing prior to that time period, but I can verify during Ole's run that we are getting no house show. I mean, maybe one every 6 months or something like that, but we're getting very little, any arena footage there on the Mid-Atlantic TV anyway. We will roll on. Wahoo McDaniel back for hour number 2, taking on Mike Miller. Gordon Soley going to note a couple of lassies from Tallahassee in the studio today. I don't know if you caught this, Jammie, but Gordon Soley
I did.
Wanted to say hello to Cindy Cookman and Melissa Hyatt. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, It is the Melissa, a.k.a. Missy Hyatt from Tallahassee, Florida. Gordon Soley saying hello to the lovely ladies in the studio this week.
Yeah, I tried looking in, at the different camera angles, and I couldn't pick up on it. So I'm just assuming Missy was probably back in his dressing room.
Well, that's a good, yeah.
And I don't know anything about Cindy Cookman. I've never heard that name before, but we all know Missy and the stories of what was actually occurring during this time period with Missy on how she got into the business and who she was kind of married to and dating and all that kind of stuff, looking back. So I wonder if Missy and Gordon hooked up back in the day.
Well, I was wondering myself, name dropping her here. I want to hear my name on TV, on cable TV. You never really know. Missy Hyatt, though, is in the building, guys. So it begins the career of one Melissa Hyatt, mentioned all the way back here in March of 1982. Wow, who knew? Meanwhile, we do have a match in the ring. Wahoo McDaniel taking on Mike Miller. Really cool slam by Wahoo at one point, almost like a standing Michinoku driver. I don't know if he intended to do that. Miller's a big boy, but he almost dropped him right on his head with the slam. And this matchup, though, even though Mike Miller's been pretty competent on TV, it's almost all Wahoo McDaniel. Big chop and a vertical suplex. Going to give Wahoo the win, 2 minutes, 52 seconds here.
Yeah, it's nice how Wahoo's another guy that just seems to come in and out for TV tapings once every 3 or 4 months. Comes in, does a Saturday morning show, and then we won't see Wahoo for 3 or 4 months again.
Well, it just shows you how respected he is in the wrestling community. You got to keep Wahoo active, got to keep his face out there on cable TV. And Wahoo McDaniel going to do an interview here, and he's standing side by side with Tommy Rich, who is now dressed in a suit. Missy, take note. More talk of wanting the belt back from Ron Bass here from the Wildfire. Wahoo, again out of breath after a 3-minute matchup here, squash match. Tommy, though, teasing taking Wahoo on as a partner, perhaps, for the World Tag Title Tournament. That would have been an interesting team.
Well, wait a minute. I got an idea. If Wahoo's out of breath and Missy Hyatt's in the building.
I don't know, man.
Hey, if you've ever read her book, it's not out of the possibility.
I didn't say it was out of the possibility. I just... Oh my goodness, what are we going to do with you, Jammie? Anyway, we continue on. We got the national champion in the ring next. It's the Outlaw Ron Bass taking on Ty the Samoan. He wrestled Manny in the first hour, taking on Ty in the second hour. And Ty is the more jacked up Samoan we saw from last week on TV, the more competent one as well in the ring. Gordon notes the background of Ty here coming from amateur football and wrestling. And the Samoan does work a headlock early on Ron Bass, but the Outlaw finally escaping begins to unleash the punishment, and the Bass Stampede Power Slam gets the win, 2 minutes, 57 seconds. Ron now putting out both Samoans on the same TV program.
Well, if you're going to take one, you might as well do them both.
Might as well do them both. I'm glad they saved the best for last. That first one ain't got it. Ty, not as bad to watch in the ring. He's also pretty burly kind of guy, pretty jacked up dude. I wouldn't mess with him. So Ron Bass, though, picking up another win, looking good here as the national champion as we get even more Tommy Rich here. This time, Tommy going to talk to Gordon once again, says he has his mind 100% on Ron Bass this time. Again, kind of making excuses for last time. And if Bass beats Tommy again, though, then the best man won, says the Wildfire. But Rich is ready 110%, which is funny because 20 seconds ago it was only 100. He's already went up 10%, although he did just come from the locker room with Melissa Hyatt.
You threw me off there, Ray.
I apologize.
Well, I was going to say, Tommy is standing in Roddy Piper's spot. So maybe Roddy Piper's aura has invaded Tommy Rich. That's where that extra 10% came from.
Well, the hot rod is definitely in the head of Tommy Rich right now, but Tommy's trying to be focused on this title belt, and we hear more from Ron Bass, who is sick of hearing from Tommy Rich and all the excuses that Roddy Piper psyched Tommy out, and that's why he lost the title belt. Bass going to prove he is the better man. He is the best. The national heavyweight champion, the Outlaw Ron Bass. And I'm kind of on Ron's side here. I hate to say it, but I'm on Ron's side here. Tommy continues to make excuses. Well, Roddy Piper psyched me out and he beat me the night before, so I was off my game the next. Shouldn't have one thing, shouldn't have anything to do with the other. Tommy Rich, I don't like the excuse here. Ron Bass, to me, making Tommy sound like the whiner. But it is true that at the Omni, the best man wins, and that's what it's going to come down to.
And that's usually flip-flopped. It's usually the heel that uses that excuse and not the babyface.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking the same exact thing. A very weird dynamic there in that matchup. But At the end of the day, like I said, it's put up or shut up time coming at the Omni. We'll find out who the better man is. As we go back to the ring now, Dick Slater back out here for hour number 2, taking on Ed Timms. And Roddy Piper rejoining commentary says, I'm not afraid of Dick Slater. He's good, but he's no Roddy Piper. Slater in the ring going to work the arm of Timms. Good groundwork as well. Timms finally going to try for some offense. Goes for a scoop slam, but Slater sliding over the back, landing his version of the Russian leg sweep. Going to give Dick the win, 2 minutes and 32 seconds. But it doesn't end there, guys, because once again, Dick Slater confronting Roddy Piper. Dick walking over, wiping the sweat off his head with Piper's tie. And Slater just wants to clarify, Piper doesn't like being called Rodney? Piper again reiterates, his name is Roderick, and don't nobody call him Rodney. Slater responds, okay. Rodney, 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 Rodney. And Slater walks off, and Piper loses it again, Jammie, snaps again on the microphone, tossing off his suit jacket. Slater in the ring, inviting Roddy Piper, let's get it on. Oh man, it looks like it's about to go down, guys. But RP doesn't take the bait. He screams from afar, standing over by Gordon. Slater then stepping back out of the ring, taking Piper's toss jacket, wiping his sweat off with it before tossing it to the side. Slater walking away. Piper absolutely irate.
Yeah. Again, Roddy Piper at his finest here. And the perfect guy, Slater, because Slater's not wrapped too tight either. So it just comes off brilliant the way this whole thing was done. And if the him calling him Rodney wasn't a planned spot, they really came up with a hell of an angle here to continue on with.
Yeah, pretty quickly. And it's so funny. I think back, go back to that Bill Irwin, the Chauncey chant, and I'm trying to replay that in my head of if this promo had went down with Bill Irwin or even later with IRS Irwin. Roddy Piper was, it's funny how things, everything goes around in full circle. Roddy Piper giving it to IRS many years later, or even, Dustin Rhodes and Paul Orndorff and the Paula chants and things of that nature in the 90s. None of those really related to this. Roddy Piper was so good at his reactions here that you weren't even really paying attention to the name necessarily, even though that was the entire story. To me, it was just, you were saying something that I said you don't say. And, now so Piper's really hot, and that's all I care about is these two are going to get it on, and it's ready to explode.
Yeah, and looking back with the knowledge that we do have, and we know it's fact because we've heard Piper discuss it, imagine the stuff that he was probably experimenting with that morning before going on television, which just even adds to this angle even more.
It's always possible, but at the same time, Piper was so on here, so money here. He seemed very focused and driven, which, certain things can make you focused, I suppose. But no, Roddy Piper doing a tremendous job this morning 6:05 in the evening, getting this entire situation over in record time. And remember, it was just hour 1. He found out he's wrestling Dick Slater. By hour 2, you can't wait for it to happen. These guys are, at each other, and Dick Slater pushing every button on Roddy Piper, and Piper responding exactly the way Slater wants him to. But we got more action here, guys, going back to the ring in a minute. But first, we're going to see Buzz Sawyer stop by to speak with Gordon, who says, you're looking at the best right here, guys, about to see some hardcore wrestling. Buzz Sawyer coining the phrase hardcore wrestling here as he takes on Manny the Samoan. Buzz comes at Manny like a buzz saw, nasty arm stretch, riding the poor Samoan around the ring, tying him all up into different pretzel holds. Stiff stomps, knee drop to Manny's face, sees him roll outside to sell it. Gordon talks Sawyer's mean streak as we see the double knees to the head, but Buzz going to pull Manny up at the 2 count, dragging him around the ring like a rag doll before finally Guntrich toss across the ring. Not a suplex, tossing him across the ring, landing a diving headbutt splash thingy. Going to give Buzz the win, 6 minutes and 1 second. 6 minutes of total destruction from the future Mad Dog.
Up to this point, Mad Dog's been here since, November, right before the tag tournament. Yeah. We've given him some love, but we're about to enter a period where we're going to give Buzz Sawyer a lot of love because he is just going to pick up his game from here on out. I mean, both with the interviews and the in-ring action. He was like a pit bull in there during this match.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, Buzz Sawyer, he was like a buzz saw. He just never stopped, like a machine in the ring. And we all know how nasty he could be. And he was every bit as nasty. Well, he kept it in the ring at least. He didn't take Manny to the floor, thank God, because that's coming too for some of these poor job guys. But Buzz Sawyer is definitely finding his own as a heel. They put him a little bit with Ole. They put him a little bit, we've seen with Kevin Sullivan. We're going to talk about that. But here, Buzz Sawyer coming into his own and handling it quite well, at least if you're Buzz anyway. We're also going to talk to Leroy Brown at the end of the hour. After the matchup, he's going to be part of the big 6-man tag we learned about coming up at the Omni. Buzz Sawyer on the other side. And Leroy Brown warning Buzz, you want to run with the big boys? You want to run with the big dogs? You better be ready. So that is an interesting point of view coming from Leroy Brown, who has been near the top for most of his time here, even though he hasn't been utilized very much in a storyline purpose. He's been pretty much near the top of the card no matter what. And so is a lot of the other guys involved in that big 6-man. Buzz Sawyer might be the odd man out when you look at the names involved. Wrestling 2, Michael Hayes, Leroy Brown, Super D, Big John Studd, and Buzz Sawyer, who is not there yet. But Leroy Brown warning him, you want to run with the big dogs, you better be ready. And I kind of like that because it points out, Buzz, do you belong here? And I think he's going to prove that he does.
Oh, yeah, and it's great to see Leroy Brown. We haven't really seen Leroy for, back before the tag tournament in February. So it's good to have Leroy back on television, even if it does look like he's running the poker game in the back with that little hat.
Yeah, the visor. I did catch that. Yeah, the blue visor. That's his new shtick here. You got to love that. So we throw to a GCW on tour vignette here, and it's
yes!
There it is. Freddie Miller, be there, Mr. Be There himself. Freddie Miller is back doing the voiceovers here for March the 28th, Columbus, Ohio. Listen to this card, guys. Great Kabuki on top versus Tommy Rich. Bob Armstrong versus Roddy Piper. Piper coming to Columbus. Super D and Big John Studd, the tag team champions, versus Leroy Brown and Terry Taylor. Buzz Sawyer on the card against Tom Prichard. And listen to this, guys. Gino Hernandez coming to Columbus, Ohio to battle Brad Armstrong. And I had to look ahead. I had cheated, Jammie, because I wanted to see if this was even going to happen. And indeed, this is literally Gino's only other date moving forward in Georgia Championship Wrestling is March the 28th in Huntington and Columbus.
Well, at least we finally have the answer, and I won't be made a liar anymore.
Well, maybe Gino got that triple time the purse thing, and he didn't need to compete here anymore. The joke was on Georgia. He got what he wanted. He got paid, and he left the territory. Maybe that's the story.
The triple the purse from Columbus, Ohio. Okay,
go.
I'll go with it.
Well, we've seen Watts and Andre and Dusty there, so you can imagine what triple the purse of the highest paid guy would be. My goodness. I mean, that's like Hulk Hogan money in the WCW or something. Who knows? But we continue on. We get a quick promo here from Ole and Stan Hansen talking the bunkhouse match against Dusty and Terry Funk. We also get a VTR from the Mac and Dream himself, B-Biv. Little silhouette. Dusty blurred out here due to being bloody after a matchup, but technical difficulties ruined that VTR. We don't really get that promo there from Big Dust. So building up one of the big main events upcoming at the next Omni card, the Bunkhouse rematch between the two big teams.
Yeah, and it will be, again, I wanted to talk my dad into driving or flying down to Atlanta, Georgia, just to see that match.
Wow, yeah, no, that's a hell of a match to want to drive to go see. I mean, you're talking 4 of the greatest to ever do it, 4 legends, 4 Hall of Famers, et cetera, et cetera. Call them anything you want. I mean, they're 4 of the biggest names in wrestling history. Dusty's gone, Ole's gone, Stan Hansen's still here, Terry Funk's gone. So yeah, I mean, Stan's the last one standing from these legendary figures. But what a match! What a tag match! But speaking of tag matches, we got one more match this week in the ring here on TV. The National Tag Team Champions, Big John Studd and Super Destroyer, taking on Tim Horner and Rick Thor. Quick work this week. Not a lot of time left on TV. So Super D with the Superplex puts Thor down 1 minute and 45 seconds. We also hear from the tag champions to close the show. They say that they took out Ron Fuller. That's why we don't see him around here no more. And now it's on to the next piece of competition, calling out all challengers, anybody, anywhere, anytime. As Gordon Soley says, so long for the Peach State of Georgia.
It was nice to see Studd and Super D, even if it was short, get a little microphone time.
Yeah, snuck them into the show. Not really giving them a lot of time. It's Superstar. Bill Eadie got a lot more promo time than Super D, Scott Irwin does, but they still need that time to shine. And it's funny that they weren't really on the program until the end, but they squeeze them in at the end. And it's amazing to see 2 guys. You take it for granted in the world of giants like New York and the WWF and later WWE that we watched for the last 3 decades plus. But you think back to this time period, these were 2 of the biggest boys out there.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if it was this interview or the interview on the next show that we were watching. I didn't write it down, but it's just popping in my head, where John Studd starts out by saying, people think the promotion just gave us these belts. But we actually beat the Armstrongs and
Yeah, that's the next episode. Right?
Leroy
Yeah.
Brown. Okay, the next and Fuller. So a little kayfabe thing there coming out.
Yeah, and then John Studd actually runs out of and some other teams I don't even remember. That was the best part of that promo.
So that's the next show.
That's the next episode.
I just watched almost all 3-4 hours of these two shows this morning, so it's all like fresh in my mind, but it's still running together.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, if you watch these back to back, Jammie, you are a true saint. I just couldn't do it, man. There's just too much notes to take on my end anyway. Even watching it though, that's a lot of squash matches, man.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell back to talk to you about all the new and exciting audio and video podcasts we've been putting together over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. As a self-funded brand, this entire ship is powered by our patrons. It's your support that keeps all of these wonderful shows going here at WrestleCopia. And with that said, I wanted to mention that we now have 3 major tiers with tons of Patreon-exclusive next-level content for our Patreon supporters. And it all starts with the $5 all-access tier, which gets you early access to many of the weekly podcasts, at least a dozen monthly digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, the insanely detailed show notes for the Wrestling Memory Grenade Regional Wrestling, and the OG Monday Warfare podcast, plus random bonus video drops, archived old-school audio watch-alongs from the early years of the brand. And if that's not all, the brand new Patreon-exclusive podcast, Ranting Raw, featuring yours truly, Ray Russell, completely uncensored, unfiltered, with honest takes, taking patron questions and addressing various topics from throughout wrestling history. It is a whole lot of fun wrapped under the all-access tier for only $5, but things get even hotter with the VIP Superfan tier. For just a few dollars more, you get everything already mentioned in the all-access tier, plus as part of the VIP tier, a whole new slew of videocast series where it's not just your typical watch-alongs. Sure, we laugh, we have fun, but we're also breaking down the history, the context, and the why behind what you're seeing. And as part of the VIP tier, you have access to Dan Gennety's Puro Resu Academy videocast, the Coliseum videocast with co-host Gene Jackson, and the Monday Warfare videocast, Raw vs. Nitro, breaking down the history of the Monday Night War. Plus, you also get the Memphis 1985 folder of goodies and all show notes for the Puro Academy podcast and Gene's retro review show. Lots to be had there at the VIP tier. But wait, there's more. For those WrestleCopia backers who crave even more from the brand, we bring you yet another level of content fit for a warrior, because it is indeed the ultimate tier, which gives you everything from the all-access pass, everything from the VIP tier, plus you will receive access to the big ones, video series featuring a lengthy look and discussion into some of the biggest pay-per-views, super shows, and other events from throughout wrestling history. It's also a great place to keep up with the big events that coincide with the Monday Warfare videocast and so many other big events from years gone by. You'll also have access to the newest big hit to the Copia brand. I'm talking about Regional Wrestling Unreal, the video series. Get ready for the next level in Regional Wrestling as we dissect territory history in video form. Watch along with us. But still, even more for your money, guys. You'll also receive access to the Treasure Chest, which offers patrons the unique opportunity to download and watch select rarities from wrestling history. And for those of you who are wondering what we offer, are contemplating joining a paid Patreon membership, or simply a curious lurker, a reminder there's a free tier at our Patreon that you can join as well. Remember, guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, or look for the QR code where available. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
We continue on, though. We're going to go on to Chattanooga, Tennessee Memorial Auditorium, also March the 20th. Going to see Jerry Oates in town, subbing for Big Red. Couldn't make this show. Jerry Oates over Chick Donovan, Tom Prichard defeating Ricky Harris, Brad Armstrong over Kevin Sullivan, Buzz Sawyer downing Jim Garvin, who's still in the territory, but just doing some jobs on the house shows here. We also see in the main event Bob Armstrong teaming with Wildfire Tommy Rich over the Super Destroyer and Ron Bass. My guess is Tommy Rich would have pinned the Outlaw there. Would have made sense.
That's the ending that should have been anyway.
We got a show March 21st in Anniston, Alabama at the Auditorium. I don't have results for that. But also on the 21st, the wrestlers head out to Marietta, Georgia, Cobb County Civic Center. Jerry Oates again over Chick Donovan, Tom Prichard downing Ricky Harris. Got some other fun matches on the card, including Kevin Sullivan defeating Bob Armstrong on a countout, Brad Armstrong over Buzz Sawyer, and the team of Super Destroyer and Ron Bass getting a win back over Tommy Rich. This time he's teaming with Leroy Brown.
Yeah, how exciting, as we've said before, for the last 2 months, they've been throwing Buzz and Brad together in matches. So I bet those matches are just dynamite.
It does appear, too, based on what I can see here in the results, March 20th marks the final night in for Jimmy Garvin, so he is out of the territory on his way to wherever the hell he's going next. So we move ahead, March 22nd, Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium. Jerry Oates, again, making the whole loop this week. Jerry Oates over Chick Donovan, Tom Prichard, putting away Ricky Harris. Buzz Sawyer teaming with Kevin Sullivan over Brad Armstrong and Ted Oates. Leroy Brown defeating the national champion, Outlaw Ron Bass, by DQ. And the NWA World Heavyweight Champion coming to town, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair himself, scoring a win over Wildfire Tommy Rich. And we'll look at the next night as well, because we got some similar matches here. March 24th, a couple nights later, Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium. We got the ladies in town. Sabrina, who I hear is not doing too well right now, not in great health, so thoughts and prayers out there too. Sabrina, who gets a win over Leilani Kai. Tom Prichard defeating Chick Donovan. The Armstrongs back together over Kevin Sullivan and Buzz Sawyer, still a team. Ron Bass defeating Leroy Brown by DQ. And the world champion Ric Flair again defeating Tommy Rich. So we get some world title matches here this week. Ric Flair and Tommy Rich, headline matches. And Leroy Brown coming for the national title this week.
But very little fanfare on television about Ric Flair coming in.
Yeah, no mention whatsoever of his stops through the cities of Columbus and Augusta this week. But the Nature Boy comes to town. They get some headline matches for sure. Flair versus your top babyface and Tommy Rich, who's not the national champion, but he's still a former world champion. So that's going to, and it's Tommy Rich, so you're going to sell out anyway. And then even the ladies come through. So we got a little bit of everything going on this week.
Yeah, I imagine they probably pushed it on the Columbus show and maybe just not on TBS at that time. But they did mention the next card that you're about to go over, that Ric Flair would be at that one.
Yes, March 25th, Sweet Home, Gadsden, Alabama at the Coliseum. Tom Prichard over Rick Harris, Buzz Sawyer defeating Ted Oates, Brad Armstrong over Kevin Sullivan on a DQ. It's Ron Bass putting away Jerry Oates. And in the main event this time, the world champion Ric Flair back again, defeating the Bullet Bob Armstrong. How fun of a match was that? I have to imagine.
Oh, yeah, that must have been dynamite.
I can only imagine Ric Flair bumping for the Bullet's comeback there. I mean, that had to be some hot fire in Alabama. Gadsden had quite a show that night. And I did notice this week, we see it on the house shows, and we're going to look at one more and then we'll talk about it. March 26th, Carrollton, Georgia at the Fairgrounds. Tom Prichard over Chick Donovan. Terry Taylor defeating Ricky Harris. Buzz Sawyer over Jim Garvin. Oh, Garvin coming back for another matchup. Sawyer over Garvin. Kevin Sullivan downing Brad Armstrong. And Bob Armstrong scoring a win over Super Destroyer and the headliner there in Carrollton. So some interesting things I'm noting here. Obviously, we know Jim Garvin's on his way out. Terry Taylor appears randomly on some of these cards as well. But another thing that sticks out to me, because what's about to happen on the TV here, Kevin Sullivan teaming with Buzz Sawyer several times this week, but Kevin working as a heel all the way into TV.
I was anxious to look at the results of this particular week, and I can't see where they may have had their falling out. Maybe they just made it up.
Yes, that's my assumption. They came into TV, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, guys, as we continue on to TBS Studios, March the 27th, more GCW TV on TBS. Your hosts again, Gordon Soley and Rod Piper. Piper going to bring in Gary Hart to open the show. Hart sharing his issues with the state of Georgia, which seem to keep banning him from the arenas. He doesn't have issues anywhere else, not in Texas, not in Columbus, Ohio, not in West Virginia. But the Hot Rod says, don't worry, Gary, I'll buy you an entire section of your own, an entire row of seats to make sure that you're there.
See, Piper is one intelligent man. The only thing missing here is Piper telling Gary Hart that he'll be at ringside with Kabuki. I'm surprised they didn't go that route again.
I just didn't understand the whole barred from the building routine, yet you can be a spectator. If you're barred from the building, you would think you're just not allowed in the building. But I don't know, tomato, tomato. We'll see what happens here as the program continues. Right now we go to the ring for big, mean Mike Miller taking on Tom Prichard. Referee going to be Scrappy McGowan for hour number 1. Tom Prichard going to wrestle the big man Mike Miller down, but the larger Miller gets in some shots to take over. Prichard finally going to make the comeback off a drop kick. Quick series of moves. Backdrop gets him a 2 count. Tom going to fire off an enziguri at one point, but misses, which looked to be a mistake. I think it was supposed to connect. I don't think Miller knew what the hell was coming. What the hell's an enziguri? Anyways, Tom Prichard counters a slam into a cradle for another 2 count, and a sloppy looking sunset flip finally going to put the big man away. Miller goes down to Tom Prichard. 7 minutes time. Solid match most of the way, then got real sloppy at the end, as I already pointed out. Mike Miller, though, just really seemed confused as to what they were doing.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of communication, it seemed like, between the two guys. And Miller, he should have been more in the sport than he was. I know he got that push in the Northwest, but I think he could have been better and bigger if he'd have fallen into a different situation.
Yeah, what's interesting here, too, is Miller's coming off doing squash matches in Crockett before doing the squash matches here, although he's competitive squashes here sometimes, maybe not all the time. But it's, you mentioned the Northwest. Anytime now, Miller's going to be heading off for his first big push up there. This could be his last week on TV, maybe next week, I'm not sure. But Miller's going to be leaving here soon. He's only here for about 4 weeks or so, and then he's off to the Northwest for the first time, and he's going to be there a long time. But right now, Tom Prichard, the youngster, getting the win there. And we hear from, again, the national champion, Ron Bass, calling out all comers. Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Tommy Rich, bring them all on, says the Outlaw. And then we go to the ring to see the champion in action. Ron Bass taking on Bruce Gallagher. Quite the mauling here, slamming and riding Gallagher all around the ring. Once he catches up to him, Gallagher trying to outrun the Outlaw early on, doesn't work too long. Long chinlock spot, leading into a backbreaker and the Bass Power Slam Stampede move. Going to give the Outlaw the win, 5:33.
Yeah, I will give it to Ron Bass. It's almost identical to Wahoo McDaniel's matches last week, but I like that Stampede that Bass does. In retrospect, it bored me back then, but rewatching it, I respect the Stampede that he had. It was pretty solid, and I know I wouldn't be able to get up after receiving it.
No, it did look pretty good. I mean, it was a pretty devastating looking move, but in hindsight's 2020, and I know things were booked differently then, but from a 2025, 2020 hindsight point of view, there are certain guys that don't need to go 5 or 6 minutes on TV. And I feel like if you give them 2-minute matches, maybe 3-minute matches, and they get their stuff in and they take it home, it protects them in the long run. And I feel like Ron Bass is one of those guys.
But when I would watch WWF, they would just come in and kill the job guys.
Right.
And get them over. But the difference between WWF and, most of the other promotions, and we've touched on this on Unreal podcast, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That they give the enhancement talent a little too much offense sometimes.
Yeah. And it depends on the offense. It depends on the talent, too, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, some of that underneath talent, should be getting some offense in. But like this Jim Gallagher, or was it Bruce Gallagher?
Bruce Gallagher,
I know they're brothers. He's never impressed me with anything, and they always give him like a little bit of offense, but just like looking at him, he's just not that impressive. And to me, he's somebody that, like you just said, should be beaten like 2 or 3 minutes and not 5 to 10, like sometimes happens.
Yeah, the only Gallagher I ever cared for carried a mallet and squashed water.
Oh, he was great.
Yes.
Back when my wife and I first got married, we saw him on TV, and he came to King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and I tried hard to get those tickets, but I want to sit up front.
Oh yeah,
and I couldn't get those seats because I wanted that watermelon to go flying all over.
Oh man, yeah, I love me some Gallagher. I think the first one I ever saw was in the late '80s or so. The "I Need a Hero" one, I believe, is the red, white, and blue one. The routine he did for the TV, and it's out there on one of the streaming apps now. I just never brought myself to go back and watch it again. But that was the day I fell in love with the Gallagher gimmick. I didn't understand all the political talk, but man, I love the fucking smashing everything you could find on that stage. Good stuff. Good stuff. I was entertained easily as a child. As we continue on, we get more from Roddy Piper and Gary Hart here. Gary says he will be in Columbus, Ohio, Huntington, West Virginia upcoming. And thanks to Roddy Piper, Gary Hart will now be at the Omni in his own section in the arena. We also hear from Bob Armstrong talking about Kabuki, talking about Gary Hart. Bob Armstrong telling Kabuki, don't bother coloring your face coming to the Omni because come April the 4th, you can color yourself gone. Bob Armstrong looking to run off Kabuki. He's been here longer than I realized. As the Bullet looking for Piper, Gary Hart, and Great Kabuki, and I'm sure the Bullet would love to have all of them gone from the territory. And then it's back to Piper, Hart, and Kabuki again. As Gary says, all I need is one friend. All I have is one friend, and that's you, Roddy Piper. And of course, he needs the Great Kabuki as well. So Gary Hart putting over that Roddy Piper is his only friend on the planet, and that's all he really needs.
Who else do you need but Roddy Piper?
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, same question.
But you just mentioned Kabuki's been around on television since September, but he's never really done the house show circuit. He's done a few here or there.
Yeah, because he's going back to Dallas in the week.
Right.
Yeah. No, but they do seem to use him for the Omni cards.
Right. Him and Gary are Omni specific.
Well, I guess Ole believes it's drawing the crowds anyway for as long as they've been using them and using them on top. Bob Armstrong, Dusty Rhodes, etc. It'll continue on. And we go to the ring route with Great Kabuki out here. Gary Hart is not banned from TBS Studios. He is ringside for Kabuki versus Rick Thor. Martial arts strikes immediately. Overhand, backhand, knife edge, palm thrust, all kinds of chops here. Thor going to fight back with a drop kick, but Kabuki straight to the underarm nerve hold O'Doom. Thor, though, going to fight free, whipping Kabuki into the corner, but runs right face first into a thrust kick and a diving chop. But Kabuki not done yet. Thor keeps fighting, and this is what you're talking about. Some guys don't need to be fighting back. He's going to roll through a nerve hold and escape, but he eats some kind of a weird claw to the face, and it sets him up for a jumping thrust kick to the throat from Kabuki, who finally gets the win. 2 minutes and 24 seconds. The match wasn't that long, but they still gave Thor more than I thought they needed to.
Yeah, it should have been a 1 minute squash, but we'll take the 2:24. Thor's another guy that never looked very impressive to me. It's weird. Sometimes, I guess it depends on who's supplying the enhancement talent.
Right.
They'll have guys that really look competitive that'll get squashed, and the guys that don't look like they should be competitive get competitive.
That's
it's a weird dynamic.
No, you're absolutely 100% correct. Hit the nail on the head. I've seen that many times. Why didn't this guy get anywhere? Like Mike Miller last week with Wahoo didn't get a single. That might have been more Wahoo than anything, but you got big Mike Miller out there and he's not really getting anything in. But then we turn around and Bruce Gallagher's, or a Rick Thor is getting in a few shots in some of these. So really odd bookings sometimes depending on the guy. But we go off now to a VTR. He's not in the studio this week, but we do hear again from Dick Slater coming to you from Southwest Wrestling. Slater says, I'm not crazy, but I'm going to drive Rodney nuts. He can't run his mouth like Piper, says Dick Slater, but he does have the ability to beat Rodney in the ring. Emphasis on Rodney. And of course, Roddy going to respond to that. Piper stating that Dick Slater, he missed the point. You do not throw rocks at a man with a machine gun. We'd hear that later again, but it's the first time I'm hearing Roddy use that term.
Yeah, I agree. That popped me when I just saw it, because I don't believe he's used that line here in Georgia. Maybe he used it in Mid-Atlantic, but we've never seen that. But what a line to throw out. And here's something else. It's nice to see, Dick Slater. We get Slater comes rolling in every another guy, every 4 to 6 months he comes in for an appearance.
Yeah.
And it's nice that we're getting this version of Dick Slater and not the Terry Funk version of Dick Slater that we see just about everywhere else.
Well, it's funny because we have Dick and Terry on the same card, so maybe that has a little bit to do with it.
And this also must be the training ground for Dr. Tom Prichard morphing into Roddy Piper, in the later 80s and the 90s.
Well, you can kind of get where, Tommy gets it. Well, Bruce, had his passion for hot rod too. I'm not really sure. I'm sure Bruce has talked about it ad nauseum as to where their affinity for Roddy Piper came from, with Piper doing Portland while they were down in Houston. But it's really interesting to see both those guys go on to do their spiel. Of course, Tom Prichard would do the Roddy Piper voice for a while. You talked about it on commentary. Kind of threw me off when I was a kid watching ESPN, watching Dallas, and Tom Prichard would join commentary. And I was like, is Roddy Piper on the fucking cut? Like, what is happening here? And of course, he would do that up in Memphis, and Bruce loves to do that as well, the Piper voice. And if he would do it as Brother Love at WrestleMania 5, in fact. So, but it's kind of funny that, to know the Prichards loved, Roddy Piper to that level. But Tom Prichard is here at the same time as Roddy Piper, and you got to imagine they had some fun at some point somewhere, maybe, perhaps. We're going to continue on. Buzz Sawyer out here for an interview, trash talking Kevin Sullivan. What's that about? Taunting Kevin Sullivan, saying, I taught you everything. I taught you how to work out. I taught you how to wrestle. I taught you how to pick up the ladies. But Sawyer has decided he doesn't need Kevin Sullivan anymore, and he's going to get rid of him permanently from Georgia. I wrote, okay, that escalated quickly. I'm not even sure what transpired there, and I don't believe, as you said, anything did.
No, it doesn't appear by looking at that week of house shows. They must have just decided, you know what, let's turn Kevin babyface and then see where it goes to. And this keeps Buzz busy until they can get him to whatever they want to get him to next.
Yeah, until they factor him in, absolutely. So it does feel like they just got to TV that day and only said, we need another babyface. Kevin, you're going babyface, and you're going to work Buzz here. We got to figure out something for Buzz for the time being. So Kevin Sullivan is de facto babyface, I guess, moving forward, because Buzz Sawyer is clearly the heel in the ring, taking on Rick Benefield here. Buzz going to rush Benefield and kicks him out straight to the floor. Back inside, some stiff shots, knee drop to the face. Then the nasty stretching, twisting begins all around the ring, slapping Benefield on the back of the head as he has him tied up. Finally, though, Buzz is going to jerk Rick up into the air, straight into a back suplex in bridge. Pure power, getting the win, 5 minutes and 17 seconds.
Again, like you said earlier, probably a little too long, but it's just an ass kicking. And they're really getting Buzz over now as, a killer. So you could see why what happens later on down the line that they're really putting into action now.
Yeah, and I would argue this is too long for a squash for my taste as well. But I think at the same time, like you said, they're building Buzz up, and so they're giving him that TV time to shine, if you will. And it is slow and methodical at times, but it's nasty. It's there's a lot of nasty stuff going on in that ring when Buzz Sawyer's in there. Roddy Piper going to mention that he's making the towns now. He's not just coming to the Omni anymore. He's going to be in Columbus, West Virginia. Roddy Piper going to start making some towns here in Georgia. Looking forward to that. And the results, seeing some of the random matches that Piper might be factored into. We also get another VTR at this point from Dick Slater, again from the Southwest Territory. He says, all right, no more name calling, Rodney. Wow. Wants a big Rodney sign at the Omni, though. So Slater stating, I'm not going to call you Rodney anymore, Rodney. But what I would like when I get to the Omni is just to see a big, giant Rodney sign out there in the crowd.
I think Dick Slater was watching some WWF tapes of the crowd having the Gomer signs
up. The Gomer, yes.
For Sergeant Slaughter the year before.
Good call there. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about the Gomer deal. Yeah, Gomer Pa, golly. Absolutely. So that's a good call, Jamie. We hear from Ole and Stan Hansen as well. Name someone that can stop the team is what they say. I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head except maybe Duff the Rose and Terry Funk. We get another silhouette VTR from Dusty here, still dripping in blood, so we can't show that on the TV. Dusty says you couldn't put him down with a steel-toed boot, and it'll never be over until they're both broken and down, referring to Ole and Hansen. So apparently a steel-toed boot came into play the last time out.
Yeah, and it's not going to be over for years and years and years and years.
And years and years.
And years.
Dusty's even going to replace Ole in the book in 91, so it just never ends. Whew. Anywho, we do get some other VTR during this little back-and-forth interview session here between Dusty, Hansen, and Ole. We see some old clips of Dusty and Ole in their feuds, and I love that at one point there's a bunkhouse lumberjack match between the two. And it starts off with Dusty beating on Ole and Ole shitting on the footage. And then Ole takes over in the matchup, and Anderson on the commentary goes, "Oh no, wait a minute, it's good now." And it was comical for Ole Anderson, I thought.
Yeah, it was comical. Did you catch some of the luminaries on the outside?
I saw Thunderbolt. There were a few guys out there, yeah.
Yeah, T-Bolt, Koloff,
yeah,
Jack Lanza. I couldn't pinpoint from when it actually was because I was trying to think of when Lanza was in Georgia. So
I believe Lanza came through when Bobby was there. Heenan was there, I believe so.
All right, so that's back in 78, 79. Before the Ole good guy turn, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah, it's they fought so many times off and on. It's hard to really pinpoint that without looking at the roster. And yeah, you're definitely gonna have to go out the Lumberjacks to figure out how old that footage was. But it was fun to go back and kind of see something. If he would only show current footage, that would be nice too, Ole. Speaking of Ole, we go back to the ring. We just heard from the team. Now we're going to see him in action. Stan Hansen, Ole Anderson, taking on both Samoans. Finally, for the first time, Mani and Ty are going to team up together, as the heel's going to club on the more muscular Ty, the more competent Ty as well. Ty botches a spot, though, and gets eaten up for his troubles. Double whip into the ropes at one point, and apparently nobody taught Ty how to hit the ropes because he runs chest first into the ropes, stumbles backwards, turns around, and gets hit with an inadvertent lariat to the nose from Stan Hansen. And remember, Ty's the competent one here, guys. Then in comes Manny, who doesn't fare any better. Eventually, Ty going to tag back in, goes to town on Ole. That doesn't last very long. Manny tossed to the floor as the heels double team, and Hansen lariat puts Ty down. The heels go over 5 minutes and 10 seconds. That was a rough outing for these Samoans.
Yeah, and somehow they actually get 3 weeks of use out of these guys. I didn't look forward to see if they're coming back, but they've been on the last 3 wees of television.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm not sure where they came from, who trained them, how they got on TV, but they have been showing up here multiple weeks in a row, and this is the first time they put him out there as a team. And Ty's looked a little more competent than his brother, his partner, whatever the case may be here, but not so much in this match. I don't know what was going on here. These guys just didn't know what they were doing out there with the likes of Ole and Stan Hansen. But we close out hour number one. We hear from Bad Leroy Brown, who talks the big man, Big John Studd. He says, "You might be big, but Leroy is too." Also, Brown mentioning that he's coming for Ron Bass and that national title, which a couple days late, we saw him in a couple title shots already at the house shows, maybe a few more on the horizon here. So Leroy Brown coming for the tag titles, coming for the national title. Even though he's not really involved in a storyline per se right now, he's name dropping the big boys.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Studd and Leroy Brown intermingling together because I believe they had not a main event feud, but I believe they went back and forth in Mid-Atlantic either in late 80 or early 81.
Okay. Yeah, that's one I'm not familiar with. I'll have to go back and do some digging into that one. We will continue on into hour number two, however. Once again, Roddy Piper bringing in Gary Hart. And again, Gary reiterating that Piper is his only friend and he's all he needs. Gary Hart can be banned from the ring, but he can't be banned from the crowd. I don't understand the logic in that, but it is what it is. He says, thanks to Roddy Piper, Gary Hart will be in the Omni, sitting maybe ringside. Gary talking about bringing a flashlight. Now, Jamie, I'm going to pick your brain on this one. Talking about bringing a flashlight. Gordon ponders, what if everybody brought a flashlight? It almost feels like Dick Slater wanting somebody to bring a giant sign, a RODNEY sign. Gordon kind of teasing, why doesn't the fans bring the flashlights as well? It would throw off whatever Gary has planned with this flashlight deal. I didn't understand it. What did I miss?
That's just evil Gordon Soley coming out to ruin Gary Hart's plans.
But what was Gary Hart's plans? What is he going to do with the flashlight? I'm confused.
He has Kabuki trained that, like if I flash twice, you give him a chop to the throat.
So it's like baseball signs, but with a flashlight.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
It's like the third base coach, but with a flashlight. So if everybody brings a flashlight, he's not going to know who's doing it. So maybe Gordon knew the secret training technique of Gary Hart when he used to say Kabuki wrestled in the dark. So maybe he used the flashlight to
guide him. I get it. Okay. Well, that's
to guide him.
So if all the fans are shining flashlights, Kabuki will be confused and Gordon working his evil ways in there. Okay. Makes sense now. Thank you, Jamie, for clarifying that for me. It's baseball signals. I got it. All right. We continue. Exactly. Kevin Sullivan out here for hour number two. We heard Buzz Sawyer badmouth him in hour one. Kevin taking on Rick Thor. Our referee going to be Nick Patrick here for the second hour. Buzz Sawyer returning to join commentary, trash talking Kevin in the matchup. and it catches Kevin's attention. Buzz wandering over to ringside repeatedly in between the commentary to distract Sullivan. Doesn't really work a whole lot, but Kevin takes it out on poor Rick Thor. Boy, does he ever. Kevin, though, out of nowhere, delivering an inside cradle to Thor, scoring the win in 4:44. He's had enough of Buzz Sawyer, puts Thor away in the middle of wrestling him, just kind of goes to the cradle, puts him away so that he can immediately jump up and head out to the apron, leaping off the apron, jumping onto the back, diving onto Buzz Sawyer, and the brawl is on. Out on the floor, pull-apart brawl. We see a bunch of the wrestlers come out from the back, try to separate the two as we head into a commercial break.
That was a nice leap by Kevin. I wasn't expecting it because most guys won't leap off the ring onto somebody. They'll get down on the floor and then attack them.
Well,
so that was a nice little move by Kevin.
To be fair, the Georgia ring is about a foot off the studio floor.
Although that's besides the point.
Although the 5-foot Kevin Sullivan made it look like the super. No, I'm just kidding, guys. But no, it was fun. It was talk about a feud that escalated quickly. Insta feud here between Kevin Sullivan, who clearly is the babyface, working Buzz Sawyer. We're even going to get a quick interview from Kevin. I guess Gordon thought that Sullivan wanted the equal time, but Kevin just here to make it quick, matter-of-factly. He says, you talked about the team. You said you made the team, Buzz. Sullivan took Buzz out of the cesspool. He's going to send him back.
And that's where Buzz should go. And I guess with them putting the title on the Ron Bass, that little three-man combination wasn't needed anymore. And as we said, this gives Buzz and Kevin something to do for a couple months. Because Kevin's not going anywhere either for a while.
No, he's not. We're going to see Kevin. We're going to see Buzz. We're going to see them get it on before too long. Right now, we're going to go back to the ring to see Super Destroyer in singles action taking on Alan Tupperella. Why does that name sound so familiar? Was that the name that Arn Anderson used the first week he was in before he was Jim Verderoso? The Tupperella just sticks out to me for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I didn't even catch the Allen part. I only heard the Tupperella. It's possible that was his original name, but I don't think it was.
Okay,
but it could have been. I could be wrong, but I recognized it too, but I didn't associate it with Arn.
Yeah, I don't remember why this is sticking out. Maybe one of our listeners out there will help me out with that and try to figure it out, and I'll say, oh yeah, that's the ticket. Big John Studd, the partner of Super D, going to join commentary here, put over his masked partner. Shortage in tag teams this week, says John Studd. Nobody wants to fight him, so they're going to go into solo competition. Super D going to work the back of Tupperella before finishing him off with the superplex.
Yeah, very well done. And that move actually sparks a whole generation of more superplexes from guys like Barry Windham using the maneuver on a common basis. Now, again, Super D's been using it since September, but they haven't put that whole time he was with Superstar, they didn't really put the move over as being devastating. So it's nice to see him use it in a match again and them get that over. And I thought Studd was great on commentary.
He did a good job. No,
he hasn't talked too much here. And you know Vince McMahon Jr. was watching TBS every Saturday night because there's a shitload of guys from January to, well, actually, let's go back to the previous September. From September to September, that when Vince Jr. takes over the WWF, he winds up bringing in a ton of guys that had worked Georgia. So I'm guessing this is where he kind of, at one point, formulates the idea of Studd-Andre feud, because Studd, during the commentary, talks about Andre, or now that's the next match where Super D says that he's almost as big as Andre the Giant.
Gordon will point out, I know when Studd's about to work here in a minute, he's going to point out that Studd is the only other man he's ever seen step in the ring over the top rope besides Andre the Giant. So they're definitely putting John Studd, his height and his size over. But Studd, very slender still here in 1982. Yes. He hasn't quite found the HGH yet.
He will by the end of the year, because he's going to be in the WWF, and he'll have his match with Backlund and then the feud with Andre as we get into 83.
Yeah, the Slam Challenge is on TV with Gorilla and things of that nature as well. Yeah, John Studd's got some big things happening in New York. But right now he's on cable TV, TBS. He's out here talking up his partner Super D. And I could be wrong, because maybe Gordon Soley just never got the memo. But this is the first time, at least in Georgia, that I've heard that move referred to as the superplex.
A good point. Maybe that is the first time.
And John Studd's the one that coins the phrase. I'm sure he got it from Scott Irwin. I don't know that it was called that before they got here. I don't know if it was called that here, and Gordon simply was not using the term. But this is the first time I've noticed it actually being referred to as the superplex. And it was done by John Studd. And Super Destroyer going over 4 minutes and 1 second. Of course, they're part of that big 6-man tag upcoming at the Omni. And we're going to hear from one of the opponents right now, VTR from Mr. Wrestling number 2, coming back into town once again. Number 2, part of the Michael Hayes and Leroy Brown team, taking on Studd, Super D, and Buzz Sawyer. And Wrestling 2, of course, thinks that they have the upper hand. We also hear from John Studd and Super Destroyer together. They're going to respond to Wrestling 2. They talk about Buzz Sawyer being part of their team. They say Buzz was the one that ran Wrestling 2 out of here a few months ago, which is kind of true. But now Wrestling 2 coming back for revenge. If you remember, guys, there was a couple of back-to-back Omni cards featuring Buzz and Wrestling 2. I believe the rematch was the Texas Death or something along those lines. And we haven't seen the Masked Man since then.
No, I think, matter of fact, this VTR may have been from Florida, because I think 2 was down there feuding with the Spoiler around this time. Because 2 doesn't even really return full-time to Georgia until we get later in the year, I believe.
Well, Wrestling 2 is coming back at the next Omni card, that's for sure. It's going to be a fun deal. And I mean, tying in a little storyline there, I like that. Buzz Sawyer had, quote-unquote, ran Wrestling 2 out of Georgia, and now he's coming back for revenge, part of that 6-man tag team match. We go back to the ring. We saw Super D in the ring a moment ago. We talked about it a minute ago. Big John Studd now going to take on Rick Benefield. Studd, much trimmer, as we pointed out, but he's still looking good. He's mobile, is what I really noted from my takeaway in this match. He could actually move around and look like a typical wrestler in the ring. Super D, much like Studd did for his match, the Destroyer going to join commentary for Studd's match, as we see a big slam from Big John here. Going to work the arm of Benefield before landing a backbreaker, setting up the over-the-shoulder backbreaker to get the submission hold, 3 minutes and 35 seconds.
Yeah, that team was really good. I mean, you and I will get to it eventually on the Unreal program with Mid-South 82. Studd and Super D will come through to defend the national tag team titles down there. So they were getting respect outside of the Georgia territory eventually.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, you can't really, even if you say, well, Super Destroyer never really was a credible main eventer per se. I say that you stick 2 guys that size that are that capable in the ring together, and you can't really top that back in 1982. It was like putting the Boss Man and Akeem together later, or Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey. This is like the precursor to that. You didn't see guys this size that often at all, much less together as a team.
Now, Superstar Super D were the perfect tag team, but I actually like this tag team better because of Studd's size. Superstar to Superstar. No, neither one's going to talk like Superstar can, or even probably wrestle as well. But the overall appearance of the act, I thought was better. The dynamic of this tag team is better than Superstar and Super D. Well,
they continue to push the 6-man tag team match after the Studd win. We hear again from Leroy Brown pushing his side of things, saying that John Studd is a big man, but Leroy Brown's heart is much bigger. It's all about the heart in the fight there. Leroy Brown going to be part of that 6-man as well. We're going to talk about that when we get to the Omni, which will be the next episode we do together, Jamie. But right now we continue on. We hear from the national champion, Ron Bass, says people are coming from everywhere wanting a piece of the Outlaw. But Bass, he simply wants Tommy Rich. He's sick of hearing Tommy make those excuses. Won't be no excuses this time come their match at the Omni. I love it. This is my favorite Ron Bass thing I've ever seen in the history of Ron Bass.
Yeah, agreed. I can't add anything else to it. This is the pinnacle of Ron Bass right here.
So embrace it, enjoy it while it lasts, guys, because I don't know if it's going to even continue through the next episode. We also get more from Roddy Piper and Gary Hart Kabuki getting ready for battle again. Gary going to dedicate this match to the Hot Rod. As we go to the ring, Great Kabuki in action again, this time taking on Bruce Gallagher. Gordon putting him over as a barroom brawler and double tough. So trying to get over Gallagher here, even though we watched him do a job in hour number 1. Kabuki goes straight into the nerve hold, martial arts chops, thrust kicks galore. Gallagher tries a monkey flip at one point, and Kabuki lands on his feet. Holy shit. Didn't see that. Sticks the landing. Kabuki counters a monkey flip, landing on his feet. Bruce turning around, right into a thrust kick, and a chop to the heart ends it. Kabuki goes over 2 minutes and 52 seconds.
See, Bob Armstrong's not the only one watching Bruce Lee movies.
Apparently not. No, I did not see that coming. I was like, did Kabuki in 1982 landing on his feet? My goodness, that was it was tremendous for what it was. I could have done with a shorter match, but I'll take it.
Yeah, 252 is not bad.
It's not bad, but I feel like Kabuki needs to get in and out of there 1 minute flat each and every time, especially for it. I think it helps his character as well. But, he does what they ask him to do out there, and he does go over at the end of the day. Very impressive finish anyway. And those thrust kicks, I say it all the time. Kabuki had two things. He had the green fog, and he had those thrust kicks. Those were no joke.
No, they weren't. And I'm not a Kabuki guy, but
no,
that was the best of Kabuki.
We continue on. We got some promos here, hard selling a lot of different things. Bob Armstrong back out, says he can be just as mean and nasty as that Kabuki we just saw in the ring. He's going to give Kabuki a hurtin' for certain at the Omni. We also get a VTR at this point, edited out of our version, thank you, Harold, of Tommy Rich going over at Mike Miller. That was last week on TV. Apparently, Harold trying to save a little tape here. We're going to see moving forward for the rest of this episode. There's also an Ole and Stan Hansen promo, which seems to be edited out. Before we go to a Terry Funk promo. Didn't know he was here this week. Where did that come from? Must have just shot in here. Terry Funk referring to himself as a thoroughbred horse. Dusty Rhodes a little bigger, so we'll call him a quarter horse. Gotta love that. But they're taking on a pair of flatland jackasses in Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen at the Omni.
It's just a shame we didn't get more Terry Funk.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, and like you said, holy shit, where did Terry Funk come from? He hasn't been on the entire show. And then with 10 minutes left to go, here comes Terry Funk out to do a promo.
Yeah, it's funny because remember when he worked the 6-man, there was no mention of Terry there, and then he was just in the ring for a 6-man tag team. Oh, yeah, by the way, here's Terry Funk's in the ring. Yeah, he's here this week. And this week, we don't hear about him. We don't see him. He's not in the ring. He doesn't cut a promo in hour number 1, not at the top of hour number 2. We're just about ready to close out the program, and Terry Funk stops by just to call Ole and Stan a pair of jackasses. So you got to love him for that. As we go back to the ring, one more match this week. Going to see the Armstrongs team up, former National Tag Team Champions Bob and Brad taking on Ed Timms and Golden Boy Chick Donovan. And we get a good early exchange between Brad and Chick. Most of the first 5 minutes of the match is Donovan and Brad Armstrong, really. Bob gets in some shots as well, but it's really mostly Chick and Brad in the ring, and just really good stuff from both guys. Very impressive. Finally, though, Ed Timms going to tag in and almost immediately runs right into a Brad Armstrong crossbody block. This match over in 4:52.
A nice ending match. Imagine how many times Brad and Chick Donovan probably worked in their careers. Because it seemed like constantly they were on TBS together. Even when, Brad comes back in, 84 and gets the national title push, it always seemed like he was wrestling Chick.
What's interesting here that I've noticed, too, is since they've lost the tag titles, Brad Armstrong's really been knocked down the card. He's been doing a lot of openers or second matches on the cards, just basic throwaway match. I mean, he's scoring a lot of wins, don't get me wrong, but it's like we're just going to go back and season you a little more, Brad, while we figure something out for you. And so Brad's just kind of out there lingering right now. Bob's obviously on top, still working with Kabuki and Piper and anybody else that steps in. Ric Flair, for instance. But Brad's just kind of there at the moment, but I like that they're still keeping him around, and he's getting a win here with his father. Good match. I really liked it, and we're going to close out the show. Got a couple of promos left, including another VTR brought in from Dick Slater in Southwest, which is edited out. Thanks, Harold. But we hear back from Roddy Piper, who cuts another promo on Dickie. He says, "I don't fear you, Dick Slater. Rodney doesn't bother him anymore. You won't make me angry and cost me the match." Roddy Piper going to let cooler heads prevail. Easier said than done, Hot Rod. But Piper says, "Rodney not going to bother me no more. I'm coming at you. I'm accepting the match. It's going to go down at the Omni, April the 4th, Dick Slater and Roddy Piper."
And this was another match or another show in which Piper just gets even better between the commentary for the matches and him going off on Dick Slater is just classic Roddy Piper stuff.
Scary good. I mean, it's scary how good Roddy Piper was. And of course Roddy Piper was a great promo. The ad-libbing that he was capable of doing is scary. Not just in wrestling, but in life. I mean, you just give him a scenario and he just rattles this shit off. There's no preparation. There's no time. I'm going to go practice this in front of a mirror. I'm going to go write this down and repeat it 3 times. No, this is, it's like 99.9% ad-libbing here from Roddy this week. And it's just amazing, the stuff that's coming out of his mouth.
I wonder if the Prichards caught him on the LA show when it was, syndicated on the Spanish-speaking channels there in the late 70s.
That might have been it, too. That's a good call, too. They say 1 in a million. Roddy Piper was 1 in infinity because you could never duplicate Roddy Piper. And it's a wonder he wasn't even bigger than he was, which he was huge. But of course you have, the Hulkster and things of that nature. But Roddy Piper is just, they say generational talent. I don't know, once in a lifetime talent is Roddy. Just listening to these promos, his responses. He's not going back and watching these Dick Slater interviews beforehand to figure out how he wants to respond, guys. He's seeing this in real time, and he's just responding naturally, and it's just amazing stuff. And I encourage anybody to go over to my YouTube, youtube.com/wrestlinggrenade. Go check these episodes out. We're going to close out Georgia this week. Buzz Sawyer going to stop by. Kind of startles Gordon. I think he was just sent out there last minute. Oh, you're back. So we get a promo here from Buzz Sawyer on Kevin Sullivan. Says, you got a lot of guts jumping me from behind. Buzz would never do a thing like that, Kevin. But Sawyer obviously coming for Kevin Sullivan now because he's a real wrestler, damn it. So Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, or future Mad Dog anyway, Buzz Sawyer clearly now embroiled in a feud with Kevin Sullivan.
And it's going to be an entertaining feud, so stay tuned.
And I guess we had like 30 seconds to kill, and Buzz just kind of got sent out there in his baseball cap and whatever sweater or whatever the hell he had on there and cut that promo. It really did feel like Gordon didn't know it was coming based on his reaction, but just a way to send us off the air. Gordon Sully bids adieu, and we bid you guys adieu. We're done again, Jammie, wrapping up another episode. 2 more weeks of Georgia in the books.
This was a great episode. As I was saying earlier, this is Piper even better than we've seen him yet. So go on Ray's YouTube and check out these 2 shows. Even if you don't want to watch the entire shows, just watch the Piper interview stuff. It's next level awesomeness.
I felt this second episode that we covered here was a little flat, but not in a bad way, just normal. Like there was nothing wrong with it. Piper really elevated it, though. Don't get me wrong. The Slater and Piper stuff definitely elevated
Absolutely.
it. I felt like the first week we covered this week was much better, but this is what happens whenever the Omni's a little further in between. Sometimes we get it every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, sometimes even almost a month, apart. And when it goes that far apart, we usually get an episode where it's kind of just settle it down because next weekend is the Omni, and we do have one more TV to get to before the Omni, and you don't want to kill everything by doing all your big stuff this week. But I thought they did a good job overall of making, things rock. They're doing a great job of building towards the next big event. The last Omni card, they kind of put it all together the day before. This one we've known now a few weeks in advance.
Yeah, and as we go along here, we've been saying it a while, but things are just going to get hotter each week. And each one of these Omni cards are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. When we get to July 4th, you don't think you can get any bigger than the July 4th show. But yes, things do continue to get bigger and bigger right through the end of the year.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I've heard a lot of people online complain about Ole's booking during the 1980s. They weren't necessarily big fans of Ole and the way he ran things. So I'm curious to see. I remember certain matches, I remember certain angles, but I can't piece it all together week to week to know what's going to be happening and when. So I'm looking forward to learning this for, I'll call it the first time, literally week to week, to break down the entire year of 1982. You got to live it, Jammie. I'm living it for the first time week to week. So it's been a fun ride, and I would do it with nobody other than you. So I want to thank you so much for doing this again. And before we wrap up, I just want you to, promote some of the other things you got going on out there in this world.
Well, every week, or just about every week, you can catch me on the Other Ship podcast. The Other Ship podcast just doesn't talk professional wrestling. They'll have shows about food and music and alcohol and all kind of different type of topics. We did a superhero one that I was on the other week where we talked about the Fantastic Four and the Superman movies. But of course, just about 2 out of 3 shows is about the current topic. We'll preview WWE, what do they call them now?
PLEs, I believe.
PLEs, yeah, the PLEs, and then we'll review the PLE the following week. So, I joined Michael Herrick and William Merriweather and Drew Samuels for those shows, and we just have a great time. If you think Ray and I have a good time doing this, the 4 of us, it's unreal.
Well, with the way TKO's pumping out pay-per-views these days, Jammie, you guys might be stuck doing that every week pretty soon here, the way it feels. But that's going to wrap it up here this week for Regional Wrestling, guys. We've got more Memphis 85 with Gene Jackson, more ICW with Steve Crawford. We're beginning the St. Louis story, going back and doing the research from the very beginnings of the St. Louis wrestling territory, long before Sam Muchnick even got there. We're going to set the stage and get that going, guys. We've got a lot going on here on Regional Wrestling. And, of course, as Jammie talked about it a little bit earlier, Regional Wrestling Unreeled, part of patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Jammie joins me there pretty much each and every time out. Right now, we're covering Mid-South, going to cover the year of 1982, and Southwest, the entire run on USA, the USA Network from December 82 through the summer of 1983. Having a blast doing that with you, Jammie, going back, and kind of a watch-along deal. You guys can join with us and watch along and have a good time as we discuss not just what's going on in front of us on the screen, but everything going on behind the scenes and all the other context that we can add.
And you can catch that on the Ultimate Tier.
The Ultimate Tier. Absolutely. Thank you, Jammie. The Ultimate Tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. But for now, guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in to Regional Rasslin. We'll be back soon. More Georgia 82 right around the corner. Thank you, Jammie.
My pleasure. And again, Ray, I really appreciate you asking me to go on this journey with you because it's been a great time.